Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about static generation in NextJS. We'll try to understand what is static generation, why we should care about it, and how we can do it. So, static generation is basically means pre-generating a page in the build time so that it can load faster. That's the most basic explanation. So whenever we're visiting any websites, so for example, if I visit my portfolio, this page doesn't have that much data, right? Or let's say about me, or let's say contact. These pages don't have too much data. So you can actually generate these pages when you are building the Next.js bundle. And this helps us to load the page faster. In fact, I can demonstrate this on a real website. So for example, this is a static page. This page doesn't have that much information. It's just some static data. So you can just reload it and it just loads without making any server call or anything like that. But not all pages are like this. So let me describe how many types of pages we can have. So broadly, pages can be of two types. Some have data, some doesn't have any data. Uh, by data, I mean dynamic data. For example, this about page has some information, but it is not dynamic. It doesn't change based on the parameter or doesn't change based on the user or customer, things like that. If you compare it to a profile page, user profile page, or let's say filter page, for example, this is a filter page. This page's information depends on the URL parameters. So if I'm selecting monthly, one kind of information. If I select weekly, it will be a different kind of information. So basically, pages are two types, without data and with data. If a page doesn't have any dynamic data, this is by default a static page in Next.js. You don't have to worry about it at all. It is automatically optimized for you. So the Next.js has already generated this page, and when you are actually reloading the page, it's not recreating the page. It's just loading whatever is cached already. Okay, as you can see, this loading time is actually pretty fast. But if we talk about this kind of dynamic pages, whenever we try to refresh, you will see that it will take a little bit longer because it is actually taking a look at the URL and determining what are the informations that we should load in this page and then loads the page itself. So if we want to demonstrate it, it is something like this. When user requests the page, in technical terms, the get server side props or whatever remote API call you are trying to make, that function runs, gets the data, then renders the page. So that is basically our second type of page that has dynamic data. But even with pages that are dynamic, we can actually generate them statically. This is called SSG or static site generation. So if you can predict what URLs can come here, for example, let's say rent monthly cars or rent weekly cars, you know that these are the only two types of URLs. Although this is dynamic, I mean, it can be many things, but rent monthly cars and rent weekly cars are the two main URLs that you want to generate on the runtime. You can do that. And that is what a static generation is. So basically, before whenever user requests the page, the server determines the parameters and delivers the page. But if you do this optimization, user requests the page is already generated on in the build time. How it knows that we'll talk about later, but it already has generated the page in the build time, and we just serve the already generated page directly. So this improves the speed and reduces the load time. In fact, I can demonstrate it. So I have actually implemented static. So this is server-side rendering. We are not doing any static generation here. This is completely dynamic. That's why it's taking so much time to load. But this is the same version of the page, same page with the static side generation version. You will notice instantly this page loads and then some other dynamic part loads. So this top section of the page is actually already generated for us. Let me show you again. This is the same page. This is the optimized version. If I reload it, it loads almost instantly, but it is still loading the server-side rendered version. So this is the power of static site generation. So we understand what a static site generation is. A static site generation is basically generating a page in the build time. Uh, if a page doesn't have any data, it is automatically statically generated for you. You don't have to do anything else. But if it has some dynamic data, then you have to do some work. And we can actually uh, do it both in the pages router and the app router. So if you visit this pages router documentation, static site generation, you have to use two functions. One is get static paths and get static props. So get static paths is basically the function where you will define whatever paths you want to build on the or pre-built basically. For example, we mentioned that we know that rent monthly cars and rent weekly cars are the two URLs we care about. So in the get static paths, you will just return an array that will contain get monthly cars and get weekly cars. And this get static props will take care of that. Obviously, there can be other URLs as well. So let's say there is a URL called get yearly cars, but you didn't include it in the get static paths. Then it will just behave like a server-side rendered page. So instead of get static props, it will call the endpoint and it will get the data dynamically. So it is kind of best of both worlds. So this is how to do it in the pages router. If you are using app router, it is even simpler. Let me find out. So this is the generate static params. This is that function that you can use in app router. The idea is same. So here they are showing an example of a blog. In fact, fortunately, I have a blog. Let's see if I go here. You can see that if I visit a particular page, this URL can be basically anything. But notice how fast it loads because this page is actually already pre-generated on the server, which means I have statically generated it. Okay, so that's the way to do it. To recap, there are two types of pages: the not dynamic pages and dynamic pages. Dynamic pages are the ones we care about. For dynamic pages, if they're completely dynamic, we cannot even predict the URLs. We go for server-side rendering, which is called SSR. And for this video, we have focused on if we can predict the URLs, we should do SSG, and we should always do SSG because it reduces the load time because it has already generated the page, which is good. So you should always try to do that and have an understanding of this. Thank you so much. This video is a part of a series where I'm trying to optimize a website speed, and we have actually already done quite a lot of improvements. We have gone from 17 to now 46. So generating the pages statically was one part of it. And you can clearly see the difference when we present you the two pages. This is the unoptimized and this is the optimized version. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and have a wonderful day. Bye.